Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to another edition of Musical Talk. I'm Thos Ribbits, and in the recent competition to find the world's most popular person, I came second only to everybody else. Now, you may remember a couple of weeks ago I was talking about that wonderful show Buried, which at the time of broadcast is currently on at the Pleasance Theatre, Islington. But you may remember that during the conversation I had with the composer and the writer, I made the observation that their show had some similarities in tone and content with another show, in that they were both about a pair of murderers. And that other show about which I was speaking was called Thrill Me, subtitled The Leopold and Loeb Story. Now, if you know your history, you'll be aware that the Leopold and Loeb case is a real case about two men who, under the influence of Nietzsche, thought that they were supermen and above and beyond the law and indeed morals of normal people in society, which led them to commit a murder. You may think that story's ringing a bell, and you might well be right, because if you've seen Alfred Hitchcock's film Rope with the wonderful Farley Granger, then you will have seen a reworking of that self-same story, a true story from the 1920s. But a much closer adaptation to what actually happened, retaining the names of the characters, is Thrill Me, the Leopold and Loeb Story, written by Stephen Dolginoff, who wrote the book, the music, the lyrics, and actually also appeared as Nathan Leopold in the original production. Written in 2003, it opened off-Broadway in 2005 in a production directed by Martin Sharnin, who you may know as one of the people behind Annie, that perennial musical. And it was immediately lauded as a great musical. It won an ASCAP award for the score very early on, and it's been nominated for plenty of other awards since. It's also had worldwide productions. In the UK's case, it first came to us in 2011 when it went to the Tristan Bates Theatre and then transferred to the Charing Cross Theatre. It was revived at the Greenwich Theatre in 2015, and then last year, in 2017, it went on a national tour, one of the stops of which was the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, where it played for the entire 3-week run. And I'm delighted to say it's just been announced that it's going to go on tour again in 2018. So this is a show that you will be able to see. In fact, it's making its Northern Irish premiere later in the year, and it will also be back in London at the Other Palace Theatre. More details on how to find out about that at the end of the programme. But first, let's talk to the two people who made the show last year so impressive. The two stars. That's Harry Downes and Ellis Dackombe. They play Leopold and Loeb, and for my money, they did so with a rare brilliance. There was a real symbiotic performance between the two of them, and so impressive were they that they've been recast this year for the 2018 run. So this isn't just a retrospective conversation of last year's performance, it's also a look forward to the 2018 run of Thrill Me. So, without further ado, and rather a lot of nothing, as they used to say, let's talk to Harry Downes and Ellis Dackombe. Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast.
My name is Ellis Dackombe. I'm playing Richard in Thrill Me at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival.
And my name is Harry Downes, and I'm playing Nathan in Thrill Me at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival.
Now, Thrill Me is based on true life circumstances, and people, I suspect, will know the story, if they know the story at all, through Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, which is another version of it, very different, but takes a similar conceit. Mm-hmm. But would one or both of you like to have a quick stab, and that may not be the right term, at describing at least the bare-bone plot for people who aren't aware of the Leopold and Loeb story?
Well, yeah, it is. It's not too dissimilar from Hitchcock's Rope. True story. In 1924, 19 and 20-year-old Richard Loeb and Nathan Leopold, they met up again after being away for a few months. They were childhood friends, and Richard is aware of Nathan's love for him and uses that to manipulate him, to get him to help him commit crimes, because Richard gets thrills out of doing those kind of things. He's got a thing for breaking rules and going against things like that. So he uses Nathan as his accomplice, and eventually things start to get out of control and they commit quite a heinous crime later on in the play. Yes, and there's two rather big twists at the end of our show. In the true story, they essentially kidnap and murder Bobby Franks, the child. The court case went on for days. Clarence Darrow, their lawyer, was famous for arguing against
the death penalty.
The death penalty, and eventually got them off. And
got them a life sentence.
Got them a life sentence, which is not.
Yes, yeah.
But it is. But you're right. It was a cause célèbre at the time. It still resonates now, and it does appear to have a particular draw for dramatists. This is a very dark piece for obvious reasons. How did you join the project? Because Thrill Me has been around now as a musical for a few years. You're both professional actors, and I see that the current production in Edinburgh is using the recent advertising photographs of tour, etc., etc.
It's funny, we keep making jokes about how we're not actually on the poster.
On the posters, yes.
And actually, if you do look at the poster, it's the same guy twice.
Oh, is it?
If you actually look closely, it's the same guy twice photoshopped. I don't know why they've done it like that, but it is.
And it's been him for quite a number of productions now, actually. The only time they changed it to the actual actors was when they did the tour a few years ago.
I think they also did it for the transfer to
the Charing Cross. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's a show, therefore, with a pedigree.
Oh, yes.
And even if they've been foolish enough not to put you both on the posters, I'm going to pay you both the compliment of saying I rather think they should have. It is such a dark piece. So what do you think the attraction is of such a horrible, grisly story? I mean, it's a very successful piece, so it can be done, and Rope shows it can be done in more than one way, but why this story more than others?
I don't know about you. I think it's because it's a true story, for starters.
Yeah, definitely.
People are interested to see how that must have come about. The music is written in such a way that it really sort of develops the story very quickly, and it heightens everything. So it's very on the edge of your seat stuff, and if you do it right, so hopefully that's what we're doing.
Yep.
Let me tell you, yes, that has happened.
You should really, because there's no interval either, it's straight through, be gripped from start to finish. And I think that's what makes it successful. There's no break, there's no stop. You from the word go, that's it. You know, you meet these two guys, there's something weird about them. Why do they interact like that? Why is that Richard being so mean to Nathan? You're enticed in straight away from the beginning, and then
it is compelling, isn't it?
Yes, and then the music just pushes that forward, and then eventually, before you know it, you hit 60, and then there's no turning back. And then you think how, and the massive scene in the middle where they do kidnap Bobby Franks and murder him, it does happen right in the middle of the show, and you think, okay, well, if that's where they've put the death, what's going to happen next? There must be something else. So it's I think that's what it is.
It does feed the audience tidbits all the way through.
Yeah, it does.
Yes, little feeders,
little bits. And I also think that what's important about it is that I find that you end up focusing a little less on the murder and more on the relationship between the two characters.
Absolutely.
Because everyone goes in knowing that they're going to do this, and so there's no big sort of reveal when it comes to the murder. But I think all of the setup, and because it's a two-hander, you can't help but get involved in their relationship. And we said from the start when we were rehearsing it that we would try to make it as little about the murder as much as you can in a show that is entirely about a murder.
Of course,
but more about the two characters and how they play off one another.
Yeah.
How did you get to be you, Mr. Shepherd, if I may quote a different musical? Merrily We Roll Along. But it's the story of how do you get to the ending which you've already seen.
Yes, no, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you already know. Yes.
But what's also great about it is that there's those couple of twists at the end that the audience doesn't see coming, which is nice. Yeah, good. Yes. I'm glad that you say that.
I know it was a proper reveal, as it were, if I may say. I want to talk a little bit more because the reason I want to talk about the context of the piece and the piece itself, its dramatic pull, is because obviously I then want to explore how you are exploring your characters themselves and into each other's relationship. Because that is the core of the piece. You two own the stage. You're on the stage particularly you, I might say, Nathan. And the Nathan character is on all the time. But, it is your piece. Everything else is incidental to that relationship. It is focused on the relationship. even the lighting highlights the nature of the two of you. I mean, forgive me, in the scene where Robert is enticing Bobby Franks into the car, we don't see Bobby. Bobby's a character we don't see as a physical actor. It starts off with two splendid headlamps and a bit of smoke machine, but the lighting then comes down, and so all you can see is the lighting from the headlamps. It's diffusing itself through the smoke, and the lighting is changed subtly, so it's the Robert character just standing... Sorry, Richard. I do apologise. No, you're right. It's the Richard character standing in front of a wall of smoke with light behind him. So it moves from a scene you can recognise as being something into just being Richard. That's really very clever lighting, clever direction. But of course, it's absolutely what the thing is about. It's about, in this case, just Richard there, but also Richard and Nathan throughout the whole piece, etc., etc. Do you think it's something to do with the fact that, as a society, and Western society I'm talking about here, is fascinated by social transgression, because there's so much social transgression in this for 1924. We live in more enlightened times now, but it is, at least from Nathan's side, a gay relationship or a gay love. Then there is the murder, which is still the most socially transgressive, if I can describe it so blandly. Then there is actually, forgive me, the Nietzsche philosophy of Superman. There's a lot of, which is on the whole discredited because of Nazism and many other reasons, but there's a whole bunch of not very pleasant things in the mix.
There really are.
I'm not saying for 1 second, by the way, that being gay is unpleasant. I'm just saying that in 1924, it's socially transgressive. And for so many years of the 20th century, that would have seen as being a bit off. So you've got these odd mixes, pulls, and yet it's absolutely compelling. How is it that we can find that? And how then does that inform your performances? That's a big old question, by the way. So you can have a good old chew on that together and apart.
Well, from my point of view, researching Nietzsche for Richard, I found that very useful, because you could really understand why someone like Richard would have been so drawn to that way of thinking, because he had a terrible childhood. It was almost ruined. He may as well not have had one. From one of the richest families in Chicago, never saw his parents, was sexually abused by his nanny from a very young age. So it almost makes sense that he was kind of the way he was. And then discovering Nietzsche, being told that, if you're clever enough and smart enough, you can be above everyone else. So of course that's going to appeal to someone in a position like that.
It is a philosophical honey trap in a sense, isn't
very
it?
Much
Kind
so.
of
It really is. And I really started to empathise with him, and I thought, wow, Richard, I feel sorry for you. I totally understand where you're coming from, and I think,
which is not to condone it, is it? And people don't always make that difference.
Yes,
but they should.
There's a difference between empathising and sympathising.
Yes, and so I think looking at it from that point of view, it just allows those aspects to grow. And then, as we were saying earlier on, the lighter aspect of the play, focusing on their relationship and what two people can do together, and that differentiation between fantasy and reality. Let's plan. It's all about the plan for Richard. Everything's, let's plan this. We'll plan this. I'm in control. We're in control.
It's anticipation.
And then suddenly, before you know it, it just goes that step too far, and you can't take that back. You can't change that. I think that's where a lot of the momentum for the piece comes from. The whole idea of anyone can plan something. Us three here having this interview could plan a murder if we wanted to.
I'm only doing it. We're not
going to.
We're not going to, and we wouldn't.
Your Honour.
Yes, we're not going to. But it's just that whole. How capable are human beings? And I think that's a fascinating thing that this piece of theatre, uncovers. Just how far would one go for someone who you're in love with, and that's what I find fascinating about Nathan's character, is that he's so obsessed with Richard that even though he's coming up with these ridiculous ideas, he thinks, well, you're enjoying it, so let's just go with it, and then before you know it goes way too far.
There you go. Hey, song lyrics and everything.
Nice drop, by the way.
Yeah, very nice drop. It is. I think the light aspects, the way that a lot of it at the beginning can seem a bit more like a game than actually the seriousness.
You don't think they're actually going to do it. No one actually thinks they're going to go.
And they're so
do
young,
it.
of course.
Exactly. Yeah. And people come up with ideas for things and think probably quite horrendous thoughts sometimes themselves anyway, just in life, but no one ever does it. And it's that difference between sort of thinking up something and actually going to do it, that little precipice moment, which does happen in Way Too Far, when it sort of suddenly goes from being a silly little plan to them actually having the rope, the crowbar, the acid in a black valise and ready to go and actually kidnap a child.
It's the psychopathy, isn't it, of that? That's when you move from being standard to non-standard. I'm using very broad terms and probably quite wrongly. I didn't want to interrupt you there, but you're right. Yes, it's that tipping over point that you've both been mentioning.
Very much so.
So, I'm going to use these terms in the broadest brush. So I hope no one will criticise me for not having a clinical definition. But there's a are the two characters sociopaths, psychopaths, or something different again? Would you not care to judge? Because they're not the same, are they? By any means, there's a strong delineation. It's not simply a case of they are two people of a like mind, because they're not. They're actually coming at it from very different positions.
Yeah. I mean, I always thought of Richard, especially from the beginning, as sort of a narcissistic psychopath sort of thing.
And anyone would.
And a lot of people would. But I mean, well, you're the one who's played the character, so you probably know a bit more.
Well,
you don't use the method, I hope.
No, I don't. Sadly not. No, that was my first impression, that he was just incapable of any normal human feeling. But in my discovery of him, I don't think that's the case at all. I think, I really looked into his background, and I found that just like with a lot of sociopaths and psychopaths, something happened to him when he was growing up. I honestly believe that when you are born, everyone is capable of love, empathy, etc. And something happens to you along the way. And I think for Richard, it just messed him up just that little bit too far. And I think because at the end of the play, when Richard thinks that Nathan isn't listening to him in the jail cell, he does come out with a whole list of things that he is genuinely scared of and afraid of, and
which humanises him,
up until that point in the show, you'd never expect Richard to say anything like that. So the one time he thinks that he's alone and is able to say these things, he finally comes out with them, and I think that shows there in that moment. It's just one song, it's just one tiny moment in the whole show that he has got all of those things inside him, but he's so obsessed with being the stronger, capable person and never showing a slight touch of weakness that he would never admit that to anyone.
Well, he overtly says it, doesn't it? It's because now I know you're not listening, essentially.
Yes.
Some dialogue to that effect. He cannot, because he has to be seen. It's all image, isn't it? But
absolutely.
You're right,
it's all a facade. It's all a facade.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's yes, I suppose the facade is all about letting other people see you, but revealing one's damage is the internalisation, what it looks like from the other side. And Nathan I always view as someone who's not, who doesn't have, like, he's not, I sort of always view him as not someone who is a sociopath or a psychopath, just someone who is incredibly deeply in love with quite an abusive person in a way, a manipulative person, but who is so in love with them that they're willing to see past that and to do obviously quite heinous things in order to be with them. And we were also saying that it's probably a very scary proposition in the 1920s to be a man in love with a man and have that fear of losing them, because it's not like modern day. We're not living in those sort of like enlightened times. It's incarceration at best.
Exactly, and so the idea, this might be the only man he ever gets to be with. There's a lot more risk involved with it all. And so I think I never really thought of him as having any kind of like, what's the best way to put it? How do you describe
Sociological
it?
defaults?
Sociological default. Yeah, we'll say with something like that. But then again, of course, there is the big twist at the end, which I'm not going to actually reveal, which might put that into question ever so slightly.
Recontextualises
his
personality.
It does.
And leaves the audience going home, what was that?
But I like how it leaves with so many questions. It's not just like, did he or didn't he, or etc. There's like multiple different potential answers to how and why, and was that possible. And we often have we get fans of the show come up to us afterwards and particularly ask Harry quite a lot, do you think Nathan actually won't give anything away?
It's the ambiguous section of the show.
It's the interpretation of the twist, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And it's fascinating because people love that aspect of the show, and
they
do. Really.
And I've got to say, I enjoy doing that part of the show. I really enjoy it.
Well, there's a change in your physicality, which is rather marvellous, actually.
There really is.
Yeah, without going into what it is.
It's concerning, actually.
It's
good.
It's as a good twist should. It takes the picture and then it just twists it, and you think, oh, I see a change. tell me then, how did you connect with this production? How are you here in Edinburgh, I suppose, is the question boiled down.
We both just graduated from Arts Educational Schools, London. From
Not actually Arts Ed, by
Arts Ed,
yes.
yeah.
In Chiswick?
Yes, in Chiswick.
Yes, I
That's
live
the
from 10
one.
minutes away.
Oh.
You are joking.
Hey,
So
small
congratulations, but that was this year.
Yes,
Yes.
we just graduated. We've got
Literally like 2-3 months ago or something like that now.
Yeah,
Well
we both ended up with the same agent.
This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I know, it's very...
MR Management.
There you go.
They're
London.
clearly doing you good.
Oh,
They
they've
are
been fantastic. They've been
fantastic.
so good.
We
so
love them to
good.
bits.
And we're not just saying that because we're being recorded. They are actually
Yes,
very
we are.
good.
We are just saying
Exactly,
that.
yeah.
Being put there.
So, but when did you know that you were going to be doing filming? Have you jumped on recently, or has there been a bit of a
So
run-up?
there were quite a few auditions, as
Yes.
there always are when you
Yeah, of
leave
course.
drama school. You get bombarded with quite a few. Our agents were fantastic. Got us multiple auditions week after week.
Yeah.
This came up. Went along to this tiny little room
Very tiny.
above a pub in Penge.
Which
in
is actually
Penge
the
West.
perfect way of training for Edinburgh, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah. The Bridge House Theatre in Penge, where we actually ended up rehearsing when we got the job.
Oh, right, okay.
And went along to this audition, and then a couple of rounds later ended up with the roles.
with the roles, which is always
and
good.
it's quite nice that we were both up for different parts.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, so you're not against
So you
each
didn't
other,
have that
yeah.
awkward moment.
Yes, yeah. Because
Yeah.
obviously sharing the same agent, we often
Yeah.
get the same auditions, but
Yeah.
different roles, which was nice.
But they're such chewy roles as well, aren't
Oh,
they?
they
I mean,
are.
you know, I mean, acting it's a myriad of opportunities, but you know, for every psychopathic or non-psychopathic murderous team, there's Widow Twankey.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the other Widow Twankey is a character of great tradition, obviously, but possibly not sociological insight. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So it's quite. These are good parts to be starting your career with.
Yeah. Oh, they've been fantastic for that. In terms of first jobs, it's been really, really great.
Yeah.
Because you could, like you say, end up going into a role that's not really much of anything, or being part of a creative team that basically tells you exactly where to stand, what angle to look at, how to say the line
Oh, I
and
see,
things.
yeah.
And it's not been like that. It's
all.
been so. I mean, obviously, there's just two of us, so it's been lots of one-on-one time with the director, the MD.
Guy Ritalik, our director, was just fantastic from start to finish. Like, it gave us so much freedom and choice. We questioned everything.
Yeah.
I think you're right to in a piece like this.
To the point where our producer Rob was a little worried at first because we asked a lot of questions,
And it was
about
heading in a very different direction to the previous casts, I think.
yes,
as well.
Can I tell you? Let's get back to this production just briefly. From an observer's point of view, it is a massive, massive triumph. It's simply that. So your choices are very sound. If you don't mind me saying that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I interrupted you.
Oh, that's right. And we just really appreciated the amount of freedom that Guy gave us to explore, and and I think I haven't had that much experience with professional directors, but so far this has been, a lovely start. It's been really,
It's been
really
so
lovely.
nice, and the opportunity to go to do a couple of preview performances at the Bridge House, then to do this whole month in Edinburgh, and then to go to the Arcola for 5 days is going to be great.
Oh, well, I'll ask about where we're going next then in a minute, if that's
Yeah.
okay. You were talking, therefore, about exploring the characters between you in this beautiful, freeing environment. That's such a good thing to hear. But did you find, over your journeys then, to get to the stage, to get actually to production, performance, did you find your characters going in different directions at any other time and you've had to draw them in? Have there been sort of avenues or dead ends that you thought might be fruitful?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. There's been moments of sort of try, but that was what was good about Guy, is that he let you sort of try something, and then we'd sit back down and kind of go, I feel like it's good, but it's not quite working, so we need to restructure this slightly. And I mean, the bit at the end, I had a tendency at the beginning to sort of enjoy it a little bit too much, and so I had to pull that back. And you spent a lot of time working on Roadster, didn't you, as to how best to work that?
Because with Roadster, it's such.
This is a song.
Yes. That, when Richard is enticing Bobby into his car, and it's such a. It is exactly what it says on the tin, kind of song. It's just, he stands there and he sings to the boy, and it's
Come and see my car.
come and get in my car, and it could be very easily. But I wanted to take it in a direction that almost made the audience want to get in my car for themselves.
You're seducing in a
yes,
way, in a non-romantic way. Yeah.
But because the audience know what's going on, naturally they would think, oh, definitely not. I'm not. That's a, you know. So you kind of don't want it to look too creepy or weird or strange, because everyone in the audience, they know what's happening. So we spent a long time just trying to figure out how would one get a 12-year-old boy into their car, so we just went along with being genuine and charming, and I actually have a lot of fun with it now, because it's just it's a flirtatious song, and it's not weird or dark or creepy like with the rest of the piece. If you take things too seriously and too dark, then people won't buy it or believe it. You know, you have to think that yes, he definitely would have got into that car.
It works. I mean, yes, you can. The enticement is sufficiently revealed in the performance to see that it could easily have happened.
Yeah, and it's the one song that I get to see from the outside, and it is quite like interesting to watch. Yeah, there's a lot of excitement in it. You almost act like a kid yourself a bit at times.
Well, it's the apogee of your plans in a way, isn't it? It's the actual things, you know, this is it making what I've always got excited about happening, the thrill of the title, let's be honest. Or one of the thrills of the title. It has more than one going on, doesn't it? This is going to sound a very strange question, but it might be instructive. Do you like your characters? And I appreciate this, there's more than one way of answering this.
I don't like what they did.
I see what you did there. You waited.
I'm like, Ellis, do you want to start?
I don't like what they did.
No, I'm not asking.
I don't think anyone's questioning that.
It's quite a hard question to sort of think about, because I love Richard. I think he's a fascinating individual. And
it's the empathy, not the sympathy.
Yes, it's the empathy, not the sympathy.
If you've got empathy, then there must be some connection.
Yes. Because you should never, as an actor, ever judge your character. You need to be able to understand them and empathise with them and want to be them. And that's hard, because the real human being, Richard Loeb, was a nasty piece of work. You know, during their court case, both of them found it amusing. They were giggling throughout. They found it funny, like two schoolboys. Didn't really understand.
They were showing off a lot.
They didn't understand. They didn't understand what they'd done. They just wanted to show off. They wanted to be like, look what we can do. And that aspect, no, I don't like Richard at all. I think he's an evil, rotten person. My Richard, the one in Thrill Me, yes, I do.
That's a
really
profound distinction as well. I think you're right to make that one.
Yes. There is a difference between Ellis Dackombe's Richard and the real Richard Loeb.
Your Honour, once again.
Yes.
Just in case it should ever come up.
Yes. So, no, I do like Richard. Harry, do you like Nathan?
I think I do like Nathan. I think it's funny. I feel like he's very well. I think he's very different to me as a person. The way he goes about things, the sort of emotional states he gets into are very unlike me, and so that has been an interesting experience in terms of playing him, because it takes me away from him a lot, and it takes a lot of energy as well. When you're doing something that you're not used to doing, it takes a lot more energy to sort of get there and maintain it.
Non-default behaviour.
Yeah, exactly. And but I would say I think I do like him. I feel, like you said, when it comes to sort of the empathy of it all, I do feel sorry for him through most of the show, because he just is so in love with Richard, and it could so easily have been a very nice relationship, and they could have just both loved each other equally, and it would have all worked out. And then there's Richard, who has to just kind of go and ruin it and use it and twist it and break it. And so I do feel sorry for him in that way. Obviously, there's also parts of me that's like, oh, come on, be stronger, for God's sake. And in some ways he is.
He's resilient.
He is very resilient. Very resilient.
Yes, because he doesn't bend too easily. He will tell Richard when...
That was the thing. That was one of my main things during rehearsals, was making sure that he doesn't come across too whiny. Like, he has to have a little bit of fight in him, otherwise he just becomes a boring character.
Oh, he's got a backbone.
Yeah.
But it's devotion which is driving him. Right. And it's interesting, isn't it, that, and once again, this is how society has changed, that this show could not have been written even in the 80s, because society would not have been ready to find some, I have to say, sympathy with Nathan as a character. Whereas now, I think that we've moved on so very far, but actually, that oddly, in this show, he's the audience's way in. We also see him one distance removed from the events, don't we, at the beginning?
Yeah.
Because as you come in and take a seat, that's your parole board from later on. So it gives us, in narrative terms, obviously it's a narrator's role, actually. The whole thing is sort of done in flashback, oddly.
Yeah.
Or at least we keep pulling out of the drama to go forward then to the parole board. So also that gives him a distance, so we're not seeing the murderous Nathan immediately, as it were. And then, first of all, it raises questions. It's the question the parole board has to ask itself. Is redemption possible? What are the criteria for redemption to be granted? If it's handed from outside. So we've got all that going on, and then there's honesty and truth of the older Nathan, who's in his 50s, I think, by then, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
And then we see the younger Nathan, but the sympathy is still there the sympathy is there in a way because we see that he is in love in a way that's socially transgressive at the period, and therefore it's going to be twice as difficult to succeed anyway. And then, as you quite rightly say, Richard is the object of the desires, and that may not necessarily be the healthiest arrangement, but I can see why you go for it if it's the only thing on offer as well. And it's not as simple as that. But.
I mean, it's interesting as well. We were talking, when we were going over all the parole board stuff, like you said about how you couldn't really write the show in the 80s or anything like that. And it's funny, actually, that the parole board scenes are set in the 50s, which is during his parole. And we realised partway through, and it's something they hadn't really thought about before in the previous productions, but he never actually says during any of his narration that they were in a relationship or that there's any love there. There's at one point one of the parole board questions the friendship, and Nathan just says we were very close. He never ever actually says it because, well, even in the 50s, it was not something that you should, just openly come out with.
It's a prisonable offence, is that? Yeah. So you'd go straight back in for a different. Yeah. It'd be a different admission of guilt, or an admission of
exactly,
as it were, of the period. Yes, you're right. I mean, whereas ironically, that's being able to say that I was in love with him as characters would give you the best explanation, which is what they're seeking. But you can't be honest. Yes, it's there's a fine line to be trodden everywhere. It's a beautiful piece of subtlety in its writing, and it's a beautiful piece in its performance. And I do think you both rise to the performance requirements of it. How have the audiences been taking it, if you don't mind me saying?
It's been taken really well, to be honest, actually, so far. There's it's been really nice to people. A lot of people tend to sort of hang around afterwards, and which is lovely as well, because we have to do the get out, which means that we're not out immediately. We're normally out after like 20 minutes.
20 minutes is luxury. Luxury in Edinburgh.
Yes, it really is.
And
5 minutes in my day.
Well, we have a 10-minute get out, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
but then we do the get out of there, but then we have to get changed out of 3-piece suits and pack it all away. And
so we have to de-cement our hair.
Our hair. Oh my god!
I will just briefly say I do like the centre parting on the man. You have lovely hair now, but you did look fine in your 20s get up. I will say.
Thank you.
He doesn't agree.
You don't agree?
I try to get out of that centre parting as quickly as possible.
I like the show. You both look very striking, if I may say.
Thank you very much.
But yeah, it's been lovely.
It's just hair, so you understand it. I'll have it when you finish with it.
And it's lovely to sit like that. They wait around just like to sort of. Some will literally just be there to say well done, and some are there to, like you say, ask questions and things about stuff.
Yeah, really lovely.
We've signed a few autographs, which is quite nice.
Yes.
And it was a little bit strange on the first day when you were like, especially because the first day we had a big group of girls from where in America. Alabama. Like
somewhere
Atlanta.
in America.
Somewhere in America.
Somewhere.
Minnesota, was it? I think it might have been
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
I thought it began with an A, but
oh well, we'll see.
A town in Minnesota.
A town in Minnesota, and then also a few groups of girls from Asia and stuff as well. And it was strange to sort of be surrounded by these people who kind of go, "Can I have?" Well, it's actually the show is massive in Korea.
Huge.
Yeah. We did not expect
We've got Korean followers now on Instagram and Twitter. Yeah, and we've had people, private messages from
we've had people who have actually come all the way from China. We've had people who've come from China and Korea just to watch the show,
specifically because it's here.
It's
been on in Korea in their equivalent to the West End for 10 years now.
Oh right, so
the show itself.
It's a known piece. It's a long running.
I tell you what was actually really nice, because this is our first professional job. It's really lovely leaving the stage door and greeting people that aren't related to you.
Yes.
That's a lovely thing. It's so nice. And
Deservedly so.
a lovely surprise as well, because you never expect anything like that. You sort of just come out a bit sweaty, a bit like, oh gosh, that was the show done then, and then all these people come out. It's lovely, but
It's been,
we've had someone flew all the way over because she couldn't make the London run.
Yeah.
She flew over and travelled to Edinburgh specifically to see it here
That is the best compliment, isn't it?
at C2 in Edinburgh. So
I shall repeat the joke of fan and super fan. It seems to fit under the circumstances.
yes.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to repeat until funny. You know the rules.
I like that. Okay.
Thank you very much. But what about negative reactions? Not because of the performances, but because the piece is actually a little bit chewy, isn't it? I mean,
We've had people walk out.
We have had people walk out.
Yeah.
Really?
Which at first I was like, oh, okay, I'm not sure how I feel about that. Yesterday I thought I saw someone walk out, and it actually sort of inspired me to keep, I actually enjoy that. I was like, I'm really glad that we are emoting something in someone that makes them feel that they have to leave. Like, I really kind
Got that edge that
I
people
love
can't
that.
deal with.
I really enjoy that
good,
because it's not everyone.
No.
It's one or two people, and that kind of makes me feel like we're doing a good job.
Yeah, that it's not because we're bad, it's actually just because
the,
that we're good
the
enough
subject
that they are
matter
feeling.
happens to be making
Yes.
you feel a certain way, and if that's not for them, then fair enough.
But as you
Thanks
say,
for buying a ticket.
but that is a compliment. It's a testament to your performances and to the narrative. Actually, I should say the whole thing together gels so perfectly. I'm going to ask you this. You probably have never had a chance to see it, but the show immediately on before you.
Buried.
Buried,
Yes.
yes. We tried to see it
We
yesterday.
tried to see it on our day off, and it was sold out because
You
they've
are
been doing
aware.
fantastic.
They're doing very well.
They are. It's a fantastic showing. But are you aware how thematically close their show is?
I know.
Yes,
Yes,
it's not too
really-
dissimilar.
And we also there's another one, isn't there? There's another show on at.
Our
at
venue
C2.
seems to have
It seems to
attracted all of
attract
the psychopaths.
The psychopath shows.
By
It's
which you mean
interesting.
shows, yes, not the
Yeah,
audiences.
yeah, not the audiences. Though you never know.
Well, yes, no, that too.
But yes, that's been interesting. I mean, they've been doing fantastically well. We do need to. The only way we can go and see it is if we are sat throughout the entire thing in costume with mics on. It's the only way we're going to be
Ready
able
to
to do
go.
it. But I think we will before the fringe is over.
Yeah,
we will do that.
With large coats.
Large coats
hiding
covering
ourselves.
everything.
But I would sincerely say, if you get the chance, do so. Just because I think you'll be. I saw them in a double bill. I saw Buried, and then I was came to see Thrill Me, and I was. I mean, they're totally different attitudes and ways of doing it. But the idea of, I'm not giving anything away. I'm talking to the people from Buried, but there are two, in this case, proper psychopaths who go on a murdering spree. I'm not going to say any more because you haven't seen it yet, but thematically and in terms of nexus points in the narrative, you just think, oh, it was so odd to see variations on a theme. I mean, it's one's British and one's American, one's contemporary, one's historic, so there are lots of differences as well. But for my kind of mind, it was just beautiful to make all the sort of the links and connections. So actually, I think it's a pretty much perfect afternoon in the theatre, if I may say. So well done, C2. I mean, I take it's just a chance.
I think so,
think
as
so,
far as I'm
yeah.
aware. But it is surprising, actually, the amount of people that do watch Buried and then watch Thrill Me immediately
double.
after. Like, sort of, psychopathic
It's
double
worked out
feature
quite well,
sort of
actually,
thing.
for both of us, both productions, actually.
Yeah.
That they because obviously word of mouth spreads and people start to hear about the two shows.
Go and see this.
Yes.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the score briefly then. It's a big old sing. I mean, obviously there is dialogue, but
But there is a lot of singing.
there is indeed. And
Yes.
as you say, it's a 90-minute show, which in Edinburgh terms is a
It's
chunky
long,
one.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely. How are you finding the score? I find it very palatable to my ear, and I found that you sang with. Once again, I get nothing but compliments. I have to say, I could not fault you in any way. Every word sat comfortably. The scansion was nice. Your diction was excellent. I mean, you don't know how much that counts as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
How many shows have you been to where you can't quite hear the words?
And
Sorry?
it's quite a wordy show as well. It's quite a word. It is really quite a wordy show.
Every week.
And there's a lot sort of revealed in the songs, and so you have to make
It's very
sure that it comes
important that
across.
they land. Very important.
Yeah.
Well, that is how the plot progresses, isn't it? I mean, it's a good modern musical in that sense, but actually every song has narrative purpose.
Yeah, definitely.
They're bizarrely satisfying to sing which I didn't think I would ever say that when I listened to the cast recording. You wouldn't really take any. They don't work out of context.
No.
They just can't.
They won't be put into a panto.
No, exactly.
No, definitely
insertable
not.
song.
Definitely not.
There's one almost ballad which Nathan gets.
Yes, I get the closest thing to a ballad.
Closest thing to a ballad. It's not Andrew Lloyd Webber, that's for sure. It is very wordy, and it's all about progressing the story. However, there's something really nice about singing, especially when they get to the end of each section, because the underscore
just sort of fades in.
None of them ever really seem to finish. They sort of just fade out with the underscore, and then the dialogue kicks back in again, and you don't ever really get a chance to sit back and think about what you just heard. It's just like, I need to take in that information, and I'll focus on the next bit
of the piece.
In
fact, it's even written in the score, I think, actually. In the score, at the very end of the show, there's just a little asterisk, and then you find the asterisk, and it says, "This is the only applause break."
The very point I was going to make, because we as the audience are unable to make our appreciation felt until the very end, which in Edinburgh terms is good, because it obviously means it doesn't slow anything up. So you've still got your 10-minute get out at the end without fines. I know how these things work. But it also requires concentration by the audience. I mean, we're not talking miraculous feats of concentration. It's not a difficult show to. It's very accessible. For what for the content matter, for the content, it's very accessible. But there is this sense of we're keeping up, we want to listen, so we're as agog as anyone else to find out how it goes. And in real life, conversation peters out or merges fluently into some other tangent. This conversation is a living testament to that, I think, in some senses. So that adds oddly to the sort of realism. And yet, at some stages, the piece is, and this is no criticism, but of course it has dramatic license. There are a couple of things in it which you think, I'm not sure that both the culprits, when arrested, will be put in the same cell to have a lovely old conversation about something. Even in 1924, that does feel like a flaw in police procedures. And indeed, the police do quite a good job quite quickly in this show. They not really see them. But that's no way a criticism, but it's important to the narrative. The narrative is all here, isn't it? It drives. It's a driving story, and a driving story cannot have let up. So that Asterix story is really quite interesting.
Yeah, it is. It does not allow for a single applause break.
Which is at the beginning as well. It says it in the as soon as the first page of the score, there will be no breaks for applause until the very end.
Which is interesting, because we did the first sort of preview that we did at the Bridge House was a gala night. And we basically did the first half and did the show, and then the second half was previous casts, which was quite nice, because there've been some quite successful people have done it, really.
You will be the two of only the latest. I didn't say that sentence properly, but you know what I'm trying to say. Yes. I expect great careers. Come on.
And our MD said it was funny. It was interesting because they sort of got interviewed a bit like this, and but then also got up and sang one of the songs from the show each. And our MD said it was interesting because he didn't quite know how to finish any of the songs, because the songs don't finish.
No,
they normally just go straight
had to make
through
up his own sort of button.
He just had to button everything with random little chords.
I think da wouldn't work.
No, not quite.
Not necessarily. No.
Not quite. No. Can you imagine?
But what next for the two of you?
Well,
that's the question.
Given how we got this job, and our lovely representatives in MR management in London, chances are we'll probably get the next one.
Be nice
at this rate we'll probably be in the same job together for the rest of our careers.
Professional partnerships. Double act for the rest of our lives. Downs and Dackombe. Dackombe and Downs.
You're going to have to argue on the billing, aren't you?
Dackombe Downs, I think it sounds better. Double D. D-Day.
But can I ask, how can people find out more about the two of you? Do you have Facebook or Twitter or a dedicated webpage?
We both have Twitter. We both have Twitter. I'm at Harry Downs, which is Downes.
And I'm at Ellis _Dackombe, which is Dackombe.
I'm
glad you spelled both of those, because there's interesting spellings, particularly on Dackombe.
Yes, definitely with Dackombe. I mean, there's been a couple of reviews where, there's one review where we've been swapped completely.
Oh, really?
And apparently I did a very moving rendition of Roadster.
Yes.
And then,
which was the first.
Yeah. And then the Broadway World review.
I don't need you anymore.
One-man show.
One-man show. I could do it. We could get away with it. I'm playing two characters already. What's one more?
What's one more? I'll go have a rest this afternoon. You do it today.
You can watch Buried.
I'll watch Buried. And then tomorrow you do the show and I'll watch Buried. No, and then the Broadway World one, I'm down as Harry Dows.
Oh.
Right.
they get so close.
One letter away.
So close. No, yeah.
So there's lots of people feverishly Googling that and not finding it. Presumably.
Yeah, exactly.
So people can stay in contact with you and find out what you're doing.
Absolutely,
I can tell you,
definitely.
I think you're both. I know I've just been. It sounds like flannel, but I think you're actors of rare sophistication. Actually, I thought it was.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Show. So, I can only tell you it's a 5-star show. It's a superb show. I hope that you sell out for the rest of the run. I hope you sell out in London, and I hope you both go on to do great and wonderful things together and apart. But when you're looking back on this, your very first professional show in the hard, cruel world, what will you take from Thrill Me?
What will we take from Thrill Me? I think, for me at least, it's been making sure that no matter what job you go into, you do take that time to sort of question things and let things go in your own direction. I think if I had ended up going into a show, and it's very easily done with drama school students straight out of school, that you can very easily just like run over them and sort of be like, this is what we're doing, you're not experienced, you don't have the clout behind you to try and go, yeah, exactly. And having that opportunity to sort of cement and be like, no, this is how I like to work, I like to question things, I like to sort of take things in my own direction. I think that's what I'm going to take away from it the most, is making sure I take the time to question things and don't just sort of go, oh, okay, the director said this, so I need to...
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, during our training, we were actively encouraged to ask questions constantly.
Sorry, actively or actively?
Yeah, hey. Both. Encouraged to ask questions and to understand yourself and make sure that you're putting yourself first and no one ever makes you feel uncomfortable, etc., etc. However, when you go out there into the industry, it's very easy to just think, oh, well, I'm a new actor, I'll just do as I'm told and I'm going to, say yes. It's really important to give yourself the time to think about things, especially in a piece that, it's a very exposing piece, so you need to be comfortable at all times. I completely agree. I will take away from this not just the amazing partnership that I've experienced with Mr. Harry Downs right here.
Oh, stop.
And the amazing experience we've had with our director Guy and our musical director Chris Rawlinson. As an actor, taking away enough time for yourself and constantly asking questions and not being afraid to maybe borderline offend anyone, as long as it comes from a place of, what's the word?
Sincerity and truth, isn't it?
Yeah, basically.
Basically.
If you are genuinely just trying to find answers to things, then there's nothing wrong with asking those questions. And
definitely.
And I think that's probably what I'll be taking from this experience. Yeah.
I mean, the problem is we're running out of time in some senses, but actually you've just opened a whole new area, of course, which is actually that, the role of a good actor is to be a psychologist of human nature and of the playwright.
Yes.
You've got to be the fusion of the intent of the writer and the character as written, which may not necessarily match the intent of the writer, in order to make it sincere for us, the audience, because, no audience member is particularly sophisticated or rather, an audience could be everything. You'll have psychologists, but most people they have a normal understanding, if they have an understanding at all. But they know what's right and they know what's wrong, and they can sense if something doesn't shine. And you therefore have to be true to almost a gut understanding of that. And that's such a skill, and it's not respected enough, in my view.
It's funny, actually.
You also need to be able to, I must add this in as well, you also need to be able to admit to defeat. If you have got these questions, if your director says, no, that's a terrible idea, then you
still have to be able to go,
thank you very much, director, I appreciate that. Yes,
can't
we'll go with your
become one
idea.
of those egotistical no, this is the way I'm doing it.
Please don't think for a second that we don't listen to anyone.
Yeah, that sounds like we've kind of gone, no, guy.
No, yes, ask questions, but also be directable and be right. Listen, you must be able to listen and respond.
Yeah, but it's funny about the audience thing, because, actually, Ellis, someone came to watch it last week, and then afterwards sort of talked to us, and it turned out that she was actually, her name was Morag, wasn't it? And it turned out she was actually, she was head psychoanalyst at one of Scotland's high security hospitals. So like the Scottish equivalent of Broadmoor. And she actually commended Ellis on
it was a lovely compliment. Actually, probably one of the nicest things anyone has said to me during this process of Thrill Me, someone who actually deals with psychopaths on a day-to-day basis, commended me on my interpretation of Richard, which was kind of
Ellis makes a very good psychopath.
Which was a little disturbing, but very, very encouraging at the same time.
But it's nice to get it from the right kind of person.
Yeah.
Because,
Definitely.
how many people have got that experience? No
Yes.
one, really. I mean,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Interesting that she should want to come and see the show.
Yeah.
I suppose if you're interested in what you do professionally, then you will want to expand. And there's going to be some people who say, I'm not doing that. It's a bit close to home.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, that was funny. That was interesting, wasn't it?
Very, very interesting. But again, lovely feedback.
Well, Harry, Ellis, I can tell you that I could talk to you for hours and hours, and I hope, again, one day in the future that I will have the chance to do so, because I hope that you'll go on to great careers, and I hope to have an opportunity seeing you in further great shows. So, for the time being, I wish you great success for Edinburgh and London, and all points thereafter. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Not
Thank
at
you
all.
for having us.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Musical talk. Well, there we are. That was Ellis Dackombe and Harry Downes, the two stars of Thrill Me, the Leopold and Loeb Story. And as I've had so often cause to say on Musical Talk, they aren't just great performers. They were really very nice people. It was a real joy to talk to them, and they couldn't have been more generous with their time. And as I said before the interview, the wonderful thing about this show, Thrill Me, the Leopold and Loeb Story, is that you can see it in 2018. If you want to find out more, go to the website www.thrillme, that's one word, -uk.com. And as I said, it's going to Northern Ireland and to London, and I hope many other places as well. So if you do get the chance to see it, then please do. I don't think you'll be disappointed. And you might like to find out more about the writer, that's Stephen Dolginoff. And if you want to do so, you can go to his website, www.stephen, that's PH, Dolginoff, DOLGINOFF, and this is all one word, .com. And as you heard in our conversation, the man who features twice in the conversation on the poster as both Leopold and Loeb is, I think, Stephen. Go to his website and have a look at his photograph and see what you think. And if you want to do as I have done and see this show and Buried, you can also still do that, because, as I also said, at the time of publishing this episode, Buried, with its very similar themes but totally different take on similar concepts, is there to be seen at the Pleasance Theatre, Islington, until this coming weekend. That's also a fantastic show. They were both shows I gave 5 stars to in Edinburgh, and I absolutely stand by that. But that's probably enough standing. I'm now going to sit down, and that can only mean that I'm leaving Musical Talk behind for another week. And so I am. So, for the time being, let me say I hope you have a wonderful week. That was meant in a friendly tone. And then in a slightly less friendly tone, let me give you an instruction. Do tune in again next week. And finally, to confuse you emotionally, I'm going to go back to charming. So, until then, goodbye. Goodbye. Now do it! This episode of Musical Talk edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2018. To find out more about the world of Musical Talk and listen to past episodes, go along to our website www.musicaltalk.co.uk or subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Musical Talk Thos.
Fringe that you can walk into a room and sit and watch someone on a chair in darkness for almost 5 minutes and think that's the show.
Yeah.
And then,
it's amazing what you can get away with at the Fringe.
And then the said person on the chair smiles and everyone applauds.
Yes, yeah. It was moving, but it was different. I was there when it happened. Yeah, well, there is a kind of sneering. Yeah, well, there's a sneering thing, isn't there? But that's the kind of thing you get at the Fringe.
Yeah, I mean,
but anyway,
like one girl said, what did she say? She said, she was sitting in a chair going, thinking, well, it's got a 5-star review, so maybe this is just some like really new piece of
enigmatic thinking to it.
Really.
But as I say, my experience was I just sort of got this sense of the wave was coming down from the I think panic could be heard in the
yes,
the
I
tech
believe
office.
I could hear people running about,
and you could presumably
see people.
Yes. And you could hear the presumably the recorded off going up and down with that, and you could hear that kind of sound that you get where the mic's being pushed to absolute max and nothing's coming out. So anyway, there we are.